Now, okay, thank you. Thank you, and thank you for joining us at the Township of Bedminster regular meeting of the Township Committee, March 16, 2020. I will see that it is 7 o'clock, and we have a full attendance of the Township Committee tonight. Ms. Sullivan, may we please have the Open Public Meetings Act statement?
Yes, sir. Adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was sent to the Courier News, located in Somerville, Burnsville News, located in Whippany, to all subscribers, and also posted here at the Municipal Building as of January 7th, 2020.
Great, thank you. Please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so as everyone knows, we are meeting in the, we hope is the, I'm going to say the end of the beginning, but we may not be at the end of the beginning of the coronavirus COVID-19 crisis. But we are scheduling meetings and we are accommodating social distancing as recommended by both the federal, state, and county governments. Seating, see the Township Committee is spread apart. Our professionals spread apart, staff is spread apart, and the public audience that is out there is spread apart, maintaining that recommended 3 to 6 foot distance. We will be removing chairs as appropriate up until cancellation of some other meetings. This will be the standard course of operation to the extent we continue to have public meetings. We'll go into more detail about the COVID-19 response from Bedminster as we proceed through the meeting, but I just wanted to start that off. We're going to try to run through the meeting pretty quickly. We do have a number of issues for exec, and we will be convening on distribution of material both on the website and on social media platforms related to getting information about COVID-19, both from the municipal standpoint as well from community standpoints, restaurants and shops and churches and everything else that we can put together, so that information will be forthcoming. I do want to give a special thank you to Judy Sullivan, Robin Ray, John Mance, and Chief Rock for all the assistance they've been giving us this last few days and in the days to come, and for entertaining my nonstop emails and phone calls over the weekend and for last week and continuing on for this week. Approval of minutes. We have four meeting minutes to approve. That's the March 2nd, 2020 regular township meeting, March 2nd closed session, the March 9th budget work session, and the March 9th closed session. Are there any comments to the meeting minutes that have not otherwise already been provided to Ms. Sullivan? Seeing none, can we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Permits and raffles. We have two. Social affair permit for the Willow School at Hamilton Farm Golf Club on April 25, 2020 from 6 p.m. to 12 a.m. Social affair permit for the Lamington Presbyterian Church at the church on May 7, 2020 from 6 to 10 p.m. So let's consider these permits and raffles first. Any questions or comments regarding these permits and raffles? Seeing none, can we have a motion to approve?
Should we be making this contingent upon?
Well, here, let's, right now, there's application for these, and I think that we should discuss later on, which is separately, whether or not these events will occur, and if they do not occur, what's the ramifications? Will all those social fair permits that we've approved over the last year, because there's many that we approve year in advance, will they have to be resubmitted and reapplied for? So
I just want to make sure legally we shouldn't be approving permits that violate instructions.
No, the permits are approved, and we can't predict the future, so the may or may not be able to have these events on April 25th and May 7th. So, but our job right now is to simply approve them or not approve them if they meet requisite standards.
And I would move to grant the permits.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so now let's get to the other question. So, what does happen with the social fair permits as many of those events have been scheduled, including, we just got word that the fire department, 29 fire, 29 first aid, 63 fire, has been
Canceled for March 28th.
it's been canceled or postponed?
Canceled at this, well, postponed with no new date
Yeah,
yet.
canceled with no indication of next steps.
So many of our venues throughout town, when they do a social fair permit, they're only allowed to have 25 social fair permits per venue. Raman and I track that for each venue. So these social fair permits are very valuable to them. They can only have 25 of them. So if they are to be canceled, we'll have to, subtract that from their total. We'll have to notify the various vendors. The state, I'm sure, will be assisting us in that. It's all done electronically. The chief has his piece of the approval process as well, so,
Did you say, or Judy, 25 per venue?
per venue.
So it's not per organization, so if there's something at Hamilton or Trump or the church, that's all they get for that year.
Right.
So,
if
if
they
they
have a
cancel and they push it out, hey, April 20, for example, let's take the Willow School at Hamilton Farm Golf Club for April 25. So they don't meet April 25. It's not going to happen. They try to push out to July. What's your take on that?
That's a process. They have to contact the
That's a-
venues,
so
see if
it's
that date's available. They'll have to amend their application. The application will probably still come before us again with that new date.
But it's a brand-new application, it's not an amendment
I
of an
think it's an
existing.
amended, we haven't done this very much. I think it's an amended application. We're looking for, there's a lot of guidance coming out from the ABC. A number of questions today with the whole thing that restaurants can only be open till 8 and it's only for takeout. What about those restaurants that have liquor licenses? Can they still, when do they stop selling liquor? So we get a lot of questions coming at us that we haven't had before. So right now, Raman and I will be working on these if they're going to be canceled. We have a lot of them.
Right, so I would imagine that we're going to see many canceled, and that as the situation abates, we'll see an influx of resubmittals. So
Right.
something to be prepared for and keep staff. And that's also something that we had discussed certainly on a lot of these county calls, is not just being prepared for what we've done and what we have scheduled, but in anticipation that if permits and work can be accomplished now, that the normal functioning of government continues during this time frame, it eases the burden for when the crisis, once again, does abate, and there's an influx of new applications and everything are going. You guys are going to be, working hard. So what we can take care of with, and we'll get to this in a little bit, whether it's restricted access or restricted hours to the municipal building, the municipal services, what we can get done now, just business going, the business of government continuing. At the same time, preps us for what happens at the end. Okay. Public comment. So, in discussion with Mr. Bellardo, I think we do have a fair amount to cover, not necessarily in open session, but some in exec session, and also to accommodate what was anticipated to be a curfew, which did not actually end up happening in the governor's executive order, but to honor that spirit, let's do one public comment session, and we'll do that session now. So if there's any member of the public that has a comment, please come up to the microphone. This will be the one-time opportunity for today, as opposed to a regular two. Anything? Robin? Jeff? Okay. Okay. Moving report discussions by subcommittee chairs, and we will start. Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. Our Prez is scheduled to meet on Thursday. We're working through the logistics. I think the one thing on is an application for a replacement fence, which I don't mean to poo-poo that, but it's not incredibly material, so we're seeing if there's an opportunity to perhaps postpone that or another way to deal with it. I don't know if an online gathering would suffice and comply with the Open Public Meetings Act, so we have to work through those issues, and we can work with Mr. Bellardo going forward as to how we can get around that, but, well, not get around, but comply with it, doing something other than a formal meeting. DPW projects are ongoing as planned, obviously subject to change in the future, but we're still working on the projects. The Pluckerman Schoolhouse Park project is going forward. We're waiting for the developer to get the rims and the buckets ready before they start laying the surface. And Joe, am I forgetting anything else material that you're working on that's still?
Working on
the piping for the.
projects for the pavement management plan on River Road West and for Carbon Bay Road.
Right.
Waiting on an architect for the police court building.
So that,
The other part of the Pluckerman Schoolhouse Park, met with a contractor the other day, see if we can get some machines there and move this stuff around. And again, it's just all logistics and just getting things worked out.
Yes.
Details.
So business as usual at a DPW. We're still working through our projects. Haven't really seen any downturn or in man hours or. Okay, so that's all I've got.
Okay.
Mayor,
Tom.
good evening all. Quick couple items. Rec. The second busiest woman in Bedminster, Robin Ray, all her programs suddenly canceled, unfortunately.
We didn't have tonight. We spread some of it.
But we still had the Easter egg hunt and all those things going on, as well as obviously all your registrations, so those are all pending. I think, Robin, you were going to put some information out on the website to alert parents and let folks know. They probably already guessed it, but we'll get it
I
out there.
sent you blast on Friday.
Beautiful. We have our upcoming meeting, which I think we can probably virtualize. We'll figure that out. I know because we can still do some work on that survey to get that pushed out. So we'll pursue that, Mayor. Board of Ed, there is a meeting tomorrow. It's been moved from Thursday to tomorrow at 6:15 for public participation, so I'll plan on attending that.
I did send, I did have some communication, and I'm touching my face, so.
Hey, Mayor, we got some hand sanitizer. Can you?
I should not be touching my face, even though I washed my hands 3 times before coming in. So I did send emails to Jen Giordano. I also sent emails to other boards in town that if you're going to continue meetings, that they should be held in large open spaces. So the Board of Ed meeting will be held in the cafeteria.
Yep. So we'll be at that one. We have our Board of Health meeting here on Thursday. There is a pending application, but I believe that will be pushed. So we will be speaking about some of the county contracts, which obviously critically important right now, given the fact of our relationship with Somerset County Department of Health. So that meeting will go on.
Do you know when that contract expires with the county?
That actually expired at the end of last year.
Okay.
We have, the new proposal has been considered. There were some questions. It's being reviewed, and they hope to vote on it Thursday night.
Right.
So, and for the record, that Jim Mergalis, who is the Deputy Director for the Somerset County Department of Health, was here at our OEM meeting. Jim's been a long-time participant with Bedminster, both from the OEM perspective as well as from the Board of Health. He's a great guy, super knowledgeable, and his participation at the OEM meeting on Friday was very valuable, I think, to the township. So there's no other alternative, is there? For,
Well, what we're looking at is some expanded coverage, and this is one of the things that Jim had teed up to the board last time, which is some of our coverage previously was lacking over the weekend, and we need to up that, and thank God we consider that alternative. So
Okay.
we've got that now. So we'll get that done on Thursday. One last item, code enforcement. Did get an email from Joe Haggerty, who indicated that I guess at least one of our businesses was concerned about some of the new signage ordinances and was concerned that their business was off on Saturday. I think that may be more part and parcel of the current crisis that's going on, but he asked whether or not we might consider a temporary kind of relief in terms of enforcement on sign enforcement. So I'd throw that out to the group here. Probably is not the worst idea in the world.
You may have to repeat that again for John.
We're just looking at some coughing episodes, so
Oh.
I missed that.
So basically the question from Joe Haggerty is, can we temporarily kind of be a little more lax on our enforcement of signage, given the fact that our local businesses are suffering, given the current.
Of course, enforcement is always an exercise of what we might call prosecutorial discretion.
Okay.
Okay?
So if anybody objects, we'll give Joe the heads up to go ahead and do that.
Okay,
That's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
thank you. Committeewoman Mareski.
Good evening, Mayor. Welcome all. We have a meeting tomorrow or Wednesday of Environmental Commission, and I think we have a meeting of JVH. Robin, do you know any more? Canceled? Okay, because I reached out to Christina and she wasn't sure. So, huh?
She's on a cruise.
Oh, jeez. Nice.
No, not
Not
so
so
nice.
much.
She may be on a
She's
cruise
not-
for a very long
she's
time.
not on a cruise. Oh, my goodness. Oof, oof.
So,
and-
quick, what do you have, what's on the agenda for EC?
There's the application for, oh, now I forgot.
Mr. Farms is on.
Is it
the-
Yeah,
Bedminster
Bedminster
Farms?
Farms, yeah. And Colin's going to attend with us
On Wednesday?
Wednesday.
Well, with library being
Canceled, now I can go to...
Now you're, okay. But I guess that also raises the question, first to confirm that
They're having the meeting.
you're having the meeting, so please touch base with Dawn, that's
She
within
just sent out
her-
the information this
yeah,
morning, so I
that's
think.
within her authority as the chair, whether or not she wants to
Sure.
make that decision. EC is considering an application, John. So they give a recommendation back to the Land Use Board. Open Public Meetings Act, is that a meeting that needs to be held in person, or is that something that could be, that EC could contemplate telephonically or virtually?
Yeah, the state's indicated you could do meetings telephonically, subject to certain guidelines. And I think Judy has the DCA,
The DCA notice came out from Mike
Right.
Amorosa
Right.
last Friday.
so just follow that. You should be all right.
Okay.
The notice that we got from Mr. Morosa said that there should be some accommodation for the public to still give comment, even though it's, it's done telephonically or any other way, there needs to be some call-in ability. I
Correct.
don't know how we would do that.
Yeah, so I think that's the difficult part, and I've talked to some other municipalities, and they actually, some of them said that even if the board meets here, they may actually set up a telephone in the town hall so that folks could come and make comment. To me, that sort of defeats the purpose. If you invite the public back in, you might as well have the board here, and once again, as we've set the room up, we've set it to comply or certainly be consistent with the social distancing directive. Certainly, I touch base with Dawn and see what she wants to do, and when Dawn's made a decision, report back to Judy, and we'll get that information back out there.
My only concern with doing that kind of meeting telephonically is that we're going to be looking at a lot of maps.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're very difficult, as I'm sure you've seen, when you shrink them down to email them, you can't see anything. And I know we want to get this done and we want to do it safely, but that would be my primary concern with doing it over the phone. But
I
I'll reach
agree
out
with
to
you. And
Dawn and see.
And that
see if she
application
agrees.
is, there's some complications with it.
Yep.
So I have the feeling that it's either going to be adjourned or it'll be held in person. But you certainly discuss what's on. And also ask Dawn to touch base with the applicant because that's the same applicant that is scheduled for Board of Health.
Right,
And
Ow.
and based upon,
Okay.
so Board of Health is Thursday.
right.
Based upon, I traded some emails with Paul Ferraro and Joe Kaczynski earlier today. The application has some extensive comments from Ferraro Engineering, who's the Board of Health professional for us. And as everyone knows, it's really regarding septic issues. So one of the questions is, do you have the meeting now to get the ball rolling on that matter? Or do you
Solve those issues
solve those
first.
issues first?
Right.
So, in any event, you just asked Dawn to confirm with the applicant or the applicant's representative to make sure that they're still on for that meeting. And the applicant going to make an appearance as well?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, all right. Anything else?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Committeewoman Fernandez.
Good evening. I just wanted to update everyone that the spring edition of the quarterly township newsletter is almost ready to go. Clearly, the coronavirus is a main priority right now, so we're hoping to send out the newsletter maybe after March 30th or the beginning of April once things have calmed down a little bit, hopefully. In an effort to keep our residents informed and to improve the communication and transparency, the goal is that the e-newsletter will be on our township website, will be posted to the Facebook page, and hopefully then shared onto other local Facebook groups, sent out to the Hills Masters Association, placed on the Bedminster School Friday folder, and also printed out and posted at the library when the time comes. So we're excited about that. And also the Bedminster Charities Fall Fest meeting is scheduled for March 24th, sorry. And after that time, I'll have an update.
Okay. And meeting is usually in conference room A?
We rotate between the various charities. That meeting will be here in conference room A, so we may be changing it.
Right.
Yeah, we'll probably, the 24th is a Tuesday, this room should be available.
Okay, right. So
yeah.
Tuesday, this should be open. So once again, bring everyone here, separate them, keep the distance, maintain social distancing. Okay.
Very good.
Thank you, Gina. We certainly look forward to getting that out there. And, you know, unfortunately, we are doing a little bit of a quick turn on the newsletter from one to emphasize more recent activities. From my perspective, Colin and I were ineligible to participate in the Land Use Board matter that was heard on Thursday, but the elite application was heard as revised by the applicant, and that variance was approved 6-1. So the project was approved. I think there's some folks that are not pleased with it, and we'll see what happens, but it went through approval. Long process, lots of opinions on it, and we'll see where it goes. That's Land Use Board. I'm trying to think if there's anything further. We were supposed to have a master plan subcommittee meeting towards the end of March. I think we're going to certainly hold that open. It's currently scheduled. We'll see if anything changes that require that being adjusted. One of the issues I think that we did discuss with the master plan is the sign ordinance itself, especially with regard to those temporary pennant flags, feather flags, pennant signs or flag signs, the waving things we get primarily from the pizzerias, the nail salons, up by Quick Check. Joe Haggerty has some pretty strong opinions about that, and he's just looking to make sure that, as well as HPC did, certainly. So HPC was actually the group that put together that memo with some recommendations. Master plan will then, once those changes have been best, present them to the land board, and the process will continue. Library. So interesting. So for the last week, as many of you know, I've been on these phone calls with the county and state and some other officials regarding what all the municipalities and what the governmental functions are during this time period. And the libraries, to me, have been a critical component of those discussions. So it started with universities closing, and that all the university students who live in Bedminster coming back. At the same time, the universities, many of them were saying, we're going to online. So you got kids home, and they're going to be working remotely. You get the news that many businesses are closing, and their parents are going to be home, working remotely. You get news that the school systems, that the Bedminster School and that the Somerset Hills Regional School is closing, as well as now schools across the state closed. So that's a lot of togetherness for families, and this is a comment I think that reverberates not just on the library and the availability of internet and computers and where people are going to do their work, but as I continue with the discussion, it comes to greater impact. So when the question is about the libraries, is, well, the libraries, one, they are a place of congregation, and the library's function is to bring people in, and they can sit down at the tables and the desks, and they can take out books, and they can stay there, they can linger. Sandy Putnam, with all his guidance for the past years, has really focused on the library becoming a community center with the cafe and the piano and just becoming a place for Bedminster and for Far Hills and for anyone else to congregate. Well, it makes it hard to do social distancing. At the same time, with all these kids coming in, kids are going to be looking for places to do work, so the library's mission becomes more important. So I've been going back and forth with Marie Crenshaw, and we were trying to figure a way to make the library work. She and I were bouncing around ideas, including reducing the number of chairs, or even eliminating the chairs. So if you want to use a computer, maybe you keep every other computer station open and maybe leave one chair at a table. But I think based upon what has happened over the last day or two, Marie made the decision that it'd be great if we could do that, but functionally not. So closing the library for 2 weeks and reassessing at that point. Library board meeting scheduled for Wednesday. What we may do, I've been talking with Marie about this, is she was originally thinking that we could convene by email. One of the things that and just do a vote on budget is maybe we can do telephonically with an opportunity for public comment somehow. So Marie and I will be working out the logistics of implementing that. We may look at Zoom, go-to meetings, or just establishing a conference call for opportunity to come in. So we'll be looking at that. Yes, that was something that we discussed, and I think that with closing the library, I think she was more concerned that there was really not much else on the agenda other than budget. I'm probably of the opinion that it does require sit down, because I think we do have to plan out the larger discussion about a 2-week shutdown or what alternatives can be made for. Jeff, I will take that up with Marie again, and you're also board. You okay with? Oh, wait, that's a Wednesday meeting. What do we have Wednesday?
EC.
EC.
EC's here.
We can divide, oh, that's right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Isn't that Thursday?
With the library, I'd also discussed with Marie meeting in the downstairs, meaning the all-purpose meeting room. So she was, yeah. So she's a little leery of doing that. So EC's at 7, library board's at 7. We'll talk to Marie and see if there's anything that we can do, whether to reschedule for a night when this room is available because our building is open, or if it's a way to accommodate the, further accommodate the all-purpose meeting room, as opposed to.
I think we need to talk.
I will talk with Marie, and there's a heck of a lot more on coronavirus, COVID-19, but for now, let's go to administrator's report.
I would like to report, this morning we had a staff meeting, and when I say staff meeting, we had all employees report in for this meeting this morning. We had all the department heads and staff to talk about how we're handling municipal government still continues on. We need to still provide services to the community, and we have activities that have to happen. In the courts building, police building, and here at the municipal building, staff is working. We are here providing services. However, we're limiting the public's access into the buildings. We posted signage on the fronts of all the buildings asking people to Come to the building, call inside, state your business. If it's something that we absolutely need you to come in, we'll let you to do so. If it's something where you can drop it in one of our drop boxes, you're just dropping off a payment or a check or something, or you need a form, we, as much as possible, doing it through the mail or dropping it in the drop box.
Just to point out, the Jersey courts have closed, all municipal courts. So
Yes.
there's basically through the end of, for us, it's the end of March.
Right.
To be
For the next
reassessed.
2 weeks, speaking with the judge, that may be amended.
Probably
but for
likely to
now,
be
for the
extended.
next 2 weeks. In the meantime, all the offices are open. Robin and I today, we were surprised at the number of residents that came to the municipal building for various services. We're still collecting petitions for the primary. We still had a number of people that needed notary services. We had some death certificates picked up today. I mean, there's still things that you have to physically hand back and forth,
So Judy, on that, what was the logistics that were set up for having the public enter the building?
Originally, we had cordoned off a section of the lobby so people could come in and sit there and wait till the next staff member could call them up to whatever counter they needed. After some discussion with the group, we decided we would contain that, we'll restrict that a little more even. In fact, Jeff was one of my customers today. So at the front of the building, we have 2 doors. There's an outer door and an inner door, and then there's the vestibule. So what we did, we set up a small table and a bench in the outer vestibule area. People, if they needed to come in and do business with us, we contained it to that area. And we had probably notarized maybe 5 documents today. And I know Robin worked on some death certificates, so we still had, exchange of paperwork out in that vestibule area. I think construction had to hand out a number of permits and things, but I mean, it was contained. People wore gloves. After each one left, we cleaned the area, left the notice out on the front. So the court was given the same instructions. They did the same. And I think the police chief set it up that if they have a call box outside their door, residents were encouraged to use the call box, and a police officer would come out and take a report if needed.
And Chief, did you have any visitors today?
Oh, we had a lot, more than usual, I think, because it's a matter of if you're not at work and you've been wanting to get here, you came today.
So
while we're on that subject, one of the things that I talked before about kids being home, high school kids being home, college kids being home, parents home from work, no place to go. Playgrounds being closed, and we haven't implemented that yet in Bedminster, but I think that's something that that we'll be considering. Certainly on what I heard today is that some towns have been either closing playgrounds or actually limiting to 1 playground set and doing disinfections. But I do believe that with all this proximity, that tensions will be rising high with everyone working together and being in one spot and everyone having access to the computer, internet. I am concerned that with the normal tensions that you see in families, but also with COVID-19 looming over everyone, that tensions will run high. And during the calls, I've actually had the same conversation with the county prosecutor about making sure that mutual aid with the police, in case that, if there is domestic violence incidents that all of us are going to need to respond to, that we may unfortunately find ourselves stretched thin. So it is something that I did ask the prosecutor to look into, just making sure that our mutual aid arrangements with all the police departments are in place. Also at the same time, to think about prevention and the opportunity for folks to take advantage of, mental health crises and all those opportunities. If you need to make a phone call, because that's a hell of a lot better than any alternative. So I just am mindful of that as we really, we're at the beginning of this issue, and hopefully, we have a quick end to it. I just want to be mindful of that, and I think for all of us, that if there's anything we can do, and in the newsletter, to promote what we can do, hey, get out of the house. You may not have a restaurant or bar or sports.
The hike and bike.
Go to the hike and bike, right?
5 feet from each other.
Yeah.
Just don't congregate.
Don't congregate. Don't congregate. Practice social distancing and go for a walk.
Or run.
Or run.
Or run.
Thank you, John. That is a good reminder for me. So I do want to put that out there. And I'm sorry, Chief, for that little detour. Back to you.
All I wanted to comment on is just, the flurry of business we had today. We did discuss various options for staff to continue to serve the public. We have a couple of ideas and plans as things go along, so.
Okay, I also want to, at the beginning, I thank the directors. I do want to give another special thank you. So after Friday's phone call with the county and then followed by our OEM meeting, I had earlier in the day sent an email to Judy, just thinking about the virus and where it's impacting. And once again, you guys have heard me say this, but the most sensitive population, once again, are the seniors who live at Pluckman Park. So not only are those folks older, but it's also affordable housing. So, and having been through that complex many times, there are folks who do not have access to computers. There are folks who do not have cell phones, and there are folks there who don't drive. So my first concern was getting notice out to them about the municipal services that we continue to operate, including the senior van, and also to get some basic facts about the coronavirus and how folks can protect themselves. So literally, probably within minutes of me sending that email, Judy put something together. And I asked it to be laminated, because I knew if you just handed these folks pieces of paper, it's going to get thrown away. But if it's laminated, it's going to be treated a little bit differently. But luckily, did you guys know we have a laminator here?
Yes.
A really, really big one.
Yeah.
Farmer's market.
Professional model.
Yeah. And it's
We're really-
operated with a commercial laminating license by, she has a CLS certificate. That's Robin Ray. So Robin
We are a very
laminated,
blessed community.
Robin laminated it out. And it was great. And I sent out, a request for volunteers to hand it out. And Ms. Turkey handed them out.
Yeah, I got a very lovely phone call today from one of the residents down there who said when whoever knocked on my door with the information, I'm sorry, I was on the phone with family, I couldn't answer the door, but when I finally went to the door, I saw what was left, and they were all chatting amongst themselves that they were very excited that, someone thought enough to come down, give this very important information about, what the services are and what to look for and what to be careful of. So very much appreciated.
Great, thank you. And Chief, I was wondering if this is something that, I know Sergeant Patterson has always been very proactive and I guess a promoter of community policing. I mean, it may be a good idea once in a while just to send an officer through Pluckman Park just to see if the folks there are, they're in good standing and everyone is being okay. So if that's something that you're comfortable with doing from a police end, I'd just like to see that happen.
Well, we can look into it. I mean, with the resources I have, I think it'd be hard to do one of those daily checks on them, but, hopefully they know that we're here and, we do step out there. It's more than just Rick Patterson. But
Right, I know it's more than Trick, but I know that he's in community policing. I still remember him from his sergeant interview. That was
Back in the
that was
day.
one of his, that was a while ago. And Judy, on the on those senior services, senior van.
So we also met about that today. The senior van normally goes out Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It travels all over Somerset County to various social events, there's some luncheons at various places they do, there's activities. This week, we've kind of geared that down a little bit. Instead of going out 3 days a week, Sarah in our office, who manages the program, usually every Monday, she calls all the seniors to see what their schedules are for the week, and we make up a schedule. We also share the service with PPAC, so we have PPAC residents that partake. This week is just going out on Wednesday. It's going to be going to Chester ShopRite only, and the seniors were very happy to be able to do that. Just going to go there, ShopRite, do their shopping, get back in the van, come back home.
Is going to that one day, is that based upon the need?
Yeah, so they were questioned, you know, we need to do, because a lot of them last week, they didn't go anywhere. Nobody signed up, nobody wanted to go anywhere. So this week now they realize, hey, they still have to get out and get food, so that's the main concern, rather than going to some of the other social events.
No, but I just want to get, is there going to be a demand to use it more than 1 day a week?
As said, we called everybody, asked them what their needs were, and we scheduled the 1 day. But if they need it more, we would certainly do it more.
And it's going, I presume, going through some sort of cleaning afterward. They anticipated there'll be a cleaning.
John's department is working on that, yes. So.
All right. Thank you. For administrators report.
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Session on introduced ordinances. We don't have one, but we do have an ordinance to introduce, which is ordinance 2020-002, an ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank under NJSA 40A:4-45.14. So this, Judy, I'm going to ask you to just, this is a relatively
Every year we
routine.
talk about this, yes.
It's routine, but
So this is
requires
something
explanation again.
We have to do this type of ordinance as an annual event. We do it prior to the introduction of the budget. It allows us to bank, and it's just a word, we don't actually put any funding aside, there's no money moves, but it allows the town the ability to exceed the 2% cap in a future crisis when we would need to do so by banking, putting aside whatever percentage of our 2% cap we didn't use this year, or from past years. We have past years we haven't gotten to the 2%. Whatever we saved was banked. It's actually banked for a 3-year period, and we can go back and use some of that to exceed 2% cap. That's not the intention this year, but if there was a crisis that we needed to, we have that ability. So that's all this says, to a maximum of 3.5%. So it's just a safety net.
Okay, and all we're doing tonight is introducing this ordinance. The public hearing for this ordinance, if it is introduced tonight, will be scheduled for April 6th in these chambers at 7 o'clock. If there are any other questions or comments? Seeing none, can we have a motion to introduce ordinance 2020-002?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Consent agenda. Consent agenda, once again, is a list of resolutions that are of a routine nature and do not necessarily require discussion unless a member of the Township Committee wants to pull one out and have it discussed separately. If there are no...
These are mostly all financial routine.
If there are no such requests, may we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
This requires roll call vote. Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Ms. Moreski?
Aye.
Ms. Fernandez?
Aye.
Mayor Jacobs?
Aye.
Thank you.
We have no other resolutions on tonight. Approval of the bill list, may we have a motion to approve the bill list pending review of individual invoices?
So moved.
Second.
Again, roll call vote. Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Ms. Moreski?
Aye.
Ms. Fernandez?
Aye.
Mayor Jacobs?
Aye.
Thank you.
Oops. Discussion items. Are there any matters that the Township Committee members want to put up for discussion? This will be certainly separate from Township Committee comments. Seeing none.
Did you want me to mention price gouging?
Yes.
Okay, so with the COVID-19 crisis, we're seeing a lot of complaints from stores that are increasing pricing for things like toilet paper, and if they even have hand sanitizer left, I'm sure that that's up as well. But the residents should know that there's a law against price gouging, and they define that to be excessive price increases during a declared state of emergency and for 30 days thereafter. So we were in a state of emergency as of March 9th, so we're clearly within the rule, the law, and they define it as a price that exceeds 10% of the price of the product or service that was sold during the normal course of business prior to the state of emergency. So folks that think that there's price gouging out there, they're encouraged to contact the Department of Consumer Affairs. Obviously, their website's there online, but the number is 973-504-6240, and they ask that they provide various information, including your name, your contact information, the nature of the complaint, the name and location of the business, the price of the good being sold, and if you know it, the price of the good prior to the state of emergency. Penalties are pretty stiff. It's to $10,000, up to $10,000 for the first offense, up to $20,000 for subsequent offenses. And the state's been reporting that they've received 270 complaints.
How many?
270 of price gouging. The state's dedicated 55 investigators to go out and look at the complaints. So, just another thing to make sure that our citizens are not getting taken advantage of.
Do those investigators, do they come from the AG's office or the Division of Investigation?
It's under the Department of Consumer Affairs, but I don't know if they're borrowing from other agencies or not. But they mentioned that they had 55 folks that are
do they give,
statewide.
Do you know if they give any further information as to where, if they have confirmed incidents of price gouging, do they identify locations?
I would assume that it's public record, Mayor, but they did not in the information that I was reviewing. They didn't have a list of, in fact, I don't know if there have been any convictions, if you will, or adjudications. It's just everything's in process right now.
And Chief, has your office been getting any, because folks, when they
No.
see something, they may
My
default
knowledge,
to
you
calling
figure
you.
someone would call us if
Right.
they had an issue,
Right.
rather than trying to figure out how to get a hold of the Division of Consumer Affairs, but not to my knowledge, nobody has called.
And for the information that we found out the newsletter, so that information, that phone number will be incorporated into that, and hopefully we can get that out
Yes,
very soon.
I want to mention that the SBA is offering some relief to local businesses. They're offering low-interest federal disaster loans for working capital up to $2 million. The interest rate is 3.75 for small businesses, 2.75 for not-for-profits. It can be extended out to 30 years, and you can use it for things like fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, and other bills that you're unable to pay during the period of time. It's not a grant, it's a loan, but the SBA is certainly a funding source for any business that's financially hit as a result of this.
And I think every business, especially those small businesses, will be, if they aren't already, hit by this. Also, once again, getting that small business administration information out there to our residents who may be small business owners, if there are any out there. Yes, there are. As well as other residents, as well as the Bedminster businesses themselves. Really, frankly, a lot of businesses that are here, pizzerias and nail salons, are small businesses, and they are going to be for sure impacted by that. So that's great information to put out there. I will say, on the calls we've had with the county, once in a while we get someone from Senator Tom Keen's office, because he represents a good chunk of the county. He's talked about the issues and legislation that is moving bipartisanly, if that's a word, adverb somewhere, through the legislature to get additional small business grants and incentives out there for those who may need it. And also, Congressman Malinowski's office had a rep on the last 2 phone calls, and their office is also supporting similar legislation to enhance further what the Small Business Administration is providing. And I think they're all working together. And Malinowski's also said, for everyone, whether it's businesses, but particularly for municipalities, to the extent we are incurring expenses or we otherwise suffer losses because of the coronavirus, to keep track of that information, and to the extent that there is some mechanism for reimbursement from the federal government, just to get information available because it may be needed for applications down the road. So that would, just distribute that information to all the directors. And if there are expenses or losses, let's keep track of that.
And then my final thought on new business was just to give you the heads up that Congress in real time is considering a pretty vast stimulus bill, I guess you call it, and included within that is going to be, where it's anticipated to pass the House and now it's with the Senate, some modifications to paid time off. So I'm working hard. We'll be monitoring that and making sure that powers that be here understand what the new law might be and what the employees' rights might be.
Great. That's great. Thank you, Doug. Anyone else for discussion items? If not, we'll go back to new business. Colin, I'll turn to you for any updates on the New Jersey American water rate increase.
Thank you, Mayor. We are still continuing that work. Obviously, as you're aware, Ms. Sullivan and I have been busy talking with some of our neighboring municipalities. Their option, obviously, is always or they can go to the ratepayer advocate, who can argue on their behalf, but I think our professional opinion is that that may get them part of the way, but we don't think it's sufficient in terms of the rate increases that New Jersey American Water has proposed, which is obviously why we've retained counsel. And the opportunity to do some basic economic analysis for a couple of towns, including neighboring Bridgewater, to kind of lay it out in terms of what the impact would be to their residents should, in fact, they suffer all or part of that rate increase. So we'll continue these conversations to hopefully bring other towns on board in addition to the few that we've already signed up.
Great. Thank you. And while this is a little analogous to the issue, is that there's the JCP&L has announced that they intend on doing a rate increase, so that's something that should evaluate and continue discussions with Mr. Mosca.
Correct.
About whether towns are looking to intervene on that issue as well.
Correct.
While we are on the subject of utilities, so a couple things that came up is that Optimum, which is, that's Altice, right?
Yes.
So apparently they're going through a rate increase as well, and there are a number of folks who are greatly disappointed by the rate increase that Optimum has announced. And as the utility chair, you sent an email out to who the Optimum
Their government affairs
contact
person,
the government
correct,
affairs
yes.
person, right.
Expressing our displeasure with that. And let's see.
No response yet, huh?
No response, funny. Well, we'll continue to hammer them and see what they can do.
Okay,
So-
but so if you can just continue with that. Also, I will say that both Altice, Optimum, and Cablevision did announce that during the crisis that they will have a program for, I think, both, was a 30-day period?
So Comcast is offering free Wi-Fi, their Xfinity hotspots.
Oh, so they're offering different programs?
Correct. So,
Okay.
well, Comcast is offering free Wi-Fi hotspots for anybody who needs them. And you can go on their webpage and sign up and they'll get you into the network. They also have, in Comcast's case, they'll give you 60 days of complimentary internet access. It's a low-end version of service, but if your kids are home or somebody's home, you can get that for a discounted rate. And Altice is doing the same for 60 days.
Okay. So it's good to some extent curate this information.
Right.
Put it into Gina's newsletter. Newsletter's going to be like this.
No, yeah, we're going to do specifically to the coronavirus.
That is, yeah, that's certainly something, once again, I think that there's going to be folks who are going to need to take advantage of that at this time. Also, I forgot on utilities, was PSE&G that announced that they were not going to do offs for late pays.
I think all the utilities in New
It was all,
Jersey
and
now.
JCP&L as well?
Yeah, everybody's,
Okay.
yeah.
I think that's more information. You know, just, your township, so your township committee is curating all this information that's coming in, and we're trying to keep it
Yeah.
in one usable spot. And yes, we are co-opting the newsletter for that, but I think that's a great,
Yeah, that's a good purpose.
great purpose for it, you're right. So, Jane's got a lot of work in formatting and making it look pretty. Old business, short rentals. Nothing new, right? Engine braking, nothing new. Pluckman Park, I think we've already covered Pluckman Park. JCP&L outages. There was supposed to be a meeting with JCP&L for folks who wanted to come see their facility up in Morristown. That's been canceled and will be rescheduled down the road. We've covered public comments, Township Committee comments. I will say we do have an executive session, and we will not be taking any action following the executive session. So we will start with Township Committee comments.
Thank you, Mayor. My only comment would just be to encourage our folks to really practice social distancing that's been talked about. Wash your hands all the time. And just let's all get through this together. I mean, we're all in it together. So the only way we'll do it is to just follow the recommendations of our healthcare professionals and stick to the quarantine. Don't look at it as a vacation to jump out with friends and go down to the local playgrounds and play around and commingle. You know, really suck it up for a little bit now, and we'll get through it quicker.
Mr. Hickey.
Can't add on to that, just to say that the mayor always reminds us at the end of every of his emails, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. So, good reminder.
Ms. Marisky.
The only thing I'll add to that is, since I've spoken with a couple restaurants, is please order from them takeout, go pick up stuff. We
Yeah.
want to keep our guys in business, and they're still going to be there.
Great.
So
Thank
that.
you. Ms. Fernandez.
I just want to take this opportunity to thank you, Mayor, and Colin, and Judy, and all the township staff that has assisted in making the coronavirus handouts for the residents of Pluckman Park. I mean, you're keeping our most valuable residents informed, and that's very important. So thank you for that.
Great, thank you. And one of the things I do want to talk about is the social distancing, and you know, on all these phone calls, you know, I think it's always a good opportunity to come back and why are we doing this? Why, right? There's a rationale. There's a rationale to social distancing, and I think sometimes in the get into the details and these curfews and these announcements, we're forgetting the why. And I just want to do a brief reminder of the reason is not to eliminate COVID-19. That's not the intent of the social distancing and the measures that the governments are taking. Is really what we're looking here is taking a hard look at the healthcare system, the healthcare network, and that looking at how China and Italy dealt with it, that they saw the peak, and then it will eventually tail off. But it's that peak that inundates the hospitals, the doctors, and the nurses, and it gets them to the point that their systems are no longer functioning. Social distancing is not necessarily going to make you immune from the virus or mean that you will never get exposure to it. The term that we've been using from the government side has been flattening the curve. So instead of that, everyone, well, not to say everyone, certainly not the case, that the impact's coming all at once, but flattening the curve. And from the public health officials, it may mean the same amount of people will experience the COVID-19 either through exposure or through actually contracting the symptoms. Same amount of people, whether it's that or that. But in that long flattened curve, the system should be able to sustain it. So remember that our healthcare system is not just for folks who are going to be impacted by the virus, but it's going to be for those who get the regular flu, for someone who breaks their leg. to make sure that when they need to go to the hospital, that the hospitals and the doctors are still functioning. So I just, I come back to that, and as we make decisions as a township committee, and as we give recommendations back to staff, that we're mindful that there's purpose for social distancing and for the actions that we're taking. We're not just doing it to cause a crisis and to make life difficult, but there's a purpose behind it. And once again, I may repeat this in the weeks to come, because I just want to make sure that everyone knows why things are happening, why decisions are being made. And this is the same guiding principle that the federal government is working on, that the state government is working on, that the county government is working on, and that the municipal governments are working on. So be mindful, social distancing, there's a reason to it. That's all I have for my comments. May we have a motion to go to adjourn to executive session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Reminder, we will not be taking any action as we return from executive session. We are not actually going anywhere. So we're gonna stay here and keep our distance.
There you go.
You want to stay?
You can come back when we adjourn. Good night, Jeff.
Stay well.
Well.
Wash your hands.
Then use moisturizer.
No, I don't have it. I don't have a fever, but I have like a cough going on.
Back on. It is 9:21 and the Township Committee has returned from closed executive session. As I indicated earlier, there's no formal action that the Township Committee is taking following closed session and return to open session. Since there's nothing else on our agenda, may we have motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Good night, and wash your hands. Don't touch your face.
Do you know how hard it is not to touch your face?
My mother was saying that forever.
Don't touch stray pens sitting on the